You open this door to a world of nostalgia, a world where webcams are sold separately, MySpace is bigger than Facebook, and live-action shows are so cartoony, animation critics would consider them worth reviewing. You just entered the door to 2005. Alright, so I know Drake and Josh isn't exactly animated, but let's be honest, a lot of us grew up on it, and it holds as much of a place in our hearts as shows like SpongeBob, Hey Arnold, Ed, Edd n Eddy, and all those other classics. This spastic show about two spastic stepbrothers was relatable, funny, slightly emotional, and in a way, it kinda gave us a glimpse of what to expect when becoming teenagers. And if you were a teenager, you kinda felt like the show understood you. And it's that charm that is a big reason the show is so memorable. That and the endless amount of memes it's inspired. So I'm gonna add to that sea of epicness with a top 10 list on their best episodes. Now I'm not gonna include any of the movies. Why? Because they're movies, not episodes. And I wanna say while preparing to make this list, I rewatched all the episodes of the show, and I found something really interesting. I still like almost every single episode. I mean, they hold up just as well as they did when I was a teenager watching them. So it was really hard for me to narrow this list down. But I think I found the 10 episodes that held up the best for me. So without further ado, here are the top 10 best Drake and Josh episodes. It's gonna take some time to realize. The Bet. This is an episode I find myself quoting a hell of a lot, and it's one I relate to pretty strongly. It's about Drake and Josh making a bet that they can go the longest without doing what they've become obsessed with doing, playing video games and eating junk food. And that right there sums up my entire teenage years. Now, one thing I really like about this show is that they do a good job combining childish humor and adult humor. The two deal with their addictions in an over-the-top and hilarious way that's gonna make you laugh as a kid. And even though it's still funny as an adult, it's also pretty accurate to how addicts behave. With Josh slowly losing his sanity over wanting to play a new game station. Hey, refresh my memory, what was that game station called again? Or Drake developing a rash that makes him look deformed. Both of these symptoms are pretty common symptoms among recovering drug addicts, and they're worked in great here.
His body was so accustomed to all the fat, sugar, and sodium that when he suddenly stopped, it resulted in this hideous facial rash. No offense.
Also, one thing the show does a lot of is overacting. I mean, you don't notice that stuff as a kid, but what's interesting for me is that noticing it as an adult just makes the episode that much funnier.
One more initial here? Perfect.
And there's no doubt in my mind that the overacting is a big reason some of these episodes are so quotable.
And it's spherical! Spherical!
And finally, that end scene is epic. I love everything about it. The way it's designed, the way Drake and Josh play off each other, and the fight at the end. I mean, even as a kid, the second I saw that pool, I knew they were going to end up in it eventually, and I still laugh my ass off when it happens. That's just a good comedic performance right there. And I bet you anything the next 9 episodes on this list are going to be just as fun as this one.
But doesn't it all look so good?
Not as good as this.
You tease! It's gonna take some time to realize.
Steered straight. Well, I mean, most Nickelodeon shows aren't complete without a jail-centered episode, and this one has a few good ones that focus on it in different ways. Like with this one, it's focused on the Scared Straight program. But in a great little twist, it never actually gets to the program, as Drake and Josh get abducted by a criminal named Blaze after robbing a gas station. I mean, that's horrifying, but they tone down the seriousness of the situation by making the robber a living cartoon.
It's a little sour. Good thing I always carry around a little sugar with me.
And I like the way Drake and Josh get put into this program. I mean, it could have been easy to make the parents seem unreasonable, But they sum up past episodes as a further reason for putting these two in this program, so it doesn't actually make them look unfair or even out of character for doing this to them. Also, Walter being in a dress, I mean, the jokes just write themselves.
This doesn't surprise me.
And Drake and Josh being handcuffed most of the episode gives them more opportunities for over-the-top comedic performances. So there's just a gold mine of humor in this episode. In fact, this episode feels like it could have been its own Drake and Josh movie.
You guys have been getting into a lot of trouble lately.
The fake IDs.
Walter, burning down our neighbor's tree house.
The counterfeit grills.
You're under arrest. Possession and sale of stolen property.
The speeding ticket.
You got a speeding ticket?
Tonight you boys are gonna see what it's like to be arrested, processed, booked, and jailed.
Jailed? Processed?
And probably best of all, there's no forced lesson here. The episode itself is the lesson, that a life of constant wrongdoing is going to result in you meeting some bad people. And while the path to that is a little bit stretched, I mean, Blaze got a pretty damn lucky break when escaping, you still get what its point is, and you can learn these lessons in a humorous way and still understand what you're being taught. And only the best episodes of a series can manage to do something like that.
And you are? Blaze.
Why do they call you Blaze?
Be quiet! I see.
It's gonna take some time to realize.
First Crush. This was the episode that made me a regular watcher of the show. I mean, I enjoyed the first 4 before this, but this was the first time I felt truly sucked into an episode. And honestly, it is one of the most generic plots of all time, because it's about Josh being unable to talk to a girl he likes. But damn it if I didn't feel Josh's pain every step of the way. And with episodes like this, you know their main message is usually gonna be yourself.
Be yourself. Be yourself.
But I think this episode portrays that very well at the end, because Josh not only wins her over with his own talents, but he gives a very relatable speech that hits home for a lot of people, and it touches on why sometimes people lie to make others like them. It's honestly pretty powerful. And I think what I also like about this episode is it's the first time Drake puts a lot of effort into helping Josh out. I mean, a good 75% of his appearance is either teaching Josh what to talk about, or bailing him out of a jam.
What's your favorite sport? Checkers. Josh. Football. Cause football's manly and I'm all man.
Hey guys.
What a man.
Yeah, the jokes in this episode I feel can go either way, but I find them hilarious. Specifically the spoon joke. Even though it is overused, it's so bizarre and out of nowhere that I can't help but laugh at it.
I just said spoons. Spoons? Oh yeah. Do you like spoons?
In fact, spoon seems to be a pretty popular punchline in episodes with Josh's love life.
Say fort.
Fort.
Now say it 3 times.
Fort. Say it twice. F-O-R-T. Say it 2 more times. Fort. Now what you eat soup with? Fort.
Really? Because I ate soup with a spoon.
Now this episode is by no means perfect. It definitely has some problems that you'd expect early episodes to have.
Hello, Kathy. Your eyes are like 2 crystal clear pools of blue.
My eyes are brown.
So Josh can paint this girl's face perfectly from memory, but he doesn't know what color her eyes are. Yeah, that's just an obvious setup for Josh to fail, and there are a few moments that kind of feel like they run on cartoon logic. But everything else is presented so well that it's easy for me to forget or overlook these things almost immediately. And when it comes to the stuff that's most important about an episode like this, they do pretty well on those parts. There's a lot of charm, there's a lot of awkwardness, and you're sure to enjoy each and every bit of it.
Thank you one and all. Peace out. It's gonna take some time to realize.
Helens Surgery. This episode has always been entertaining to me, and it feels like it was the funnest episode for this cast to film. It's filled with some of the most memorable gags from the show, like the superpower mega sours, the blind dance-off, which I'm sure the one and only C.R. Martin would be very fond of, and what is, in my opinion, the funniest intro of the show.
Drake, you better not steal my story, or I swear.
So one time me and Josh take the dune buggy out to the desert, right? And Josh...
And the setup, I think, is pretty interesting. It's about Helen getting laser eye surgery, and while taking care of her, Drake and Josh discover she's loaded and a former child star. Honestly, the sheer fact that a former child star is working at a movie theater is already a funny commentary in of itself. And let me tell you, this is where it pays off to have a bunch of crazy characters, because Helen being blind reveals how truly insane this woman is. She comes to work the same day after having surgery, talks about all these errands she ran while blind, and oh yeah, here's the kicker, she also drove everywhere.
Yeah, not my best idea.
No shit.
All of this is revealed within the first minute of her arrival, and yet, it sounds exactly like something Helen would do. See, when you can do crazy characters right, you can get away with so much in terms of writing. And the humor, for the most part, is pretty good. Helen being blind and affected by her meds is absolutely hilarious, and it leads to some very memorable quotes.
Drake Parker, I love you like the son I never wanted.
I mean, you can tell Yvette Nicole Brown was having a blast here. And frankly, I think the acting in this episode is more funny than the actual jokes that are written. Like, why on God's green earth would you just leave your baby there and walk away? I mean, obviously to set up the joke, but when you do a setup that obvious, the actors have to sell the joke at that point, and they always seem to.
Don't worry, Helen! Something's coming!
I also like the delve into Josh's psyche when Drake loses Helen for a bit, and Josh imagines everyone blaming him at Helen's funeral. I mean, this is a great way to work in this kind of humor, because it's all imaginary. But you could totally buy that Josh would feel this way, since he's always blamed for stuff Drake does anyway. Overall, this is an enjoyable episode, and it's one of the most rewatchable episodes of the show. It's just a straight up good time. What more needs to be said?
Oh, sweet. It's gonna take some time to realize.
The Gary Grill. I admit it's no chocolate with nuts, but it's still a pretty damn good salesman episode where Drake and Josh are recruited to sell MP3 fused Gary Coleman grills. Nice little get around there. And they actually are pretty good at it. But the two end up getting arrested because it turns out that the grills are stolen. I gotta say, I'm shocked that Nickelodeon shows seem to enjoy episodes like this, but damn if they don't always find a creative way to do them. Drake and Josh are pretty damn good salesmen, and their techniques, I think, are pretty well handled. Like pretending to be in an argument to subtly convince their classmates to buy some grills. I mean, even watching this as a teenager, I knew that tactic would have worked on me. And it's really all they need for you to buy that they would be good at this, so they can move on without trying to hammer it in. And whereas Steered Straight never actually gets to the booking and jailing and all that good stuff, I think this episode is why it never gets to that, because they already did it great here. The interrogation scene is well written and acted, and plays off earlier elements in a creative way.
What were the names of these two guys?
Well, one of their names was,
This is Guy?
Guy.
And what was his buddy's name?
Oh, my name's Buddy.
Buddy.
Them being put in a cell is great because the criminals in it say pretty disturbing things, but they're worded in a way that keeps it from feeling too real. And Drake and Josh's reaction to them is perfect. It's exactly what you'd expect from them. And as a whole, the episode flows really well. And it going from a sales episode to a doing time episode is a pretty good little joke in of itself that all salesmen are crooks. Not to mention it's capped off with what I think is a pretty good cameo from Gary Coleman. Honestly, I never really watched a lot of Gary Coleman's stuff. I'm one of those people who only know him as the guy who popularized...
What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about?
So I don't know if there are any references to some of his other work I could be missing, but as a whole, I found his comedic deliveries pretty funny. Honestly, I thought he had some of the blandest written dialogue from this episode, but he sells it pretty well.
Please, can we keep the chair? Have you sat in it? Yes. Keep it.
But the chair was never seen again. In my opinion, this episode does what a good salesman should do. It knows its audience, knows what its audience can handle, and is willing to tell certain jokes that it knows it can tell. It's no wonder this episode is considered a classic.
I've read about prison, and it ain't fun.
It's gonna take some time to realize.
Foam Finger. With all the crazy insanity between these two, it's hard not to wonder what they thought of each other the first time they met, not realizing they'd someday become stepbrothers. And while we thought we got that answer from the episode Mindy's Back, this episode reveals the real story of how they felt, as it's about the two realizing they first met at a baseball game when they were 8, and they got into a fight over a foam finger, which results in them going right back to hating each other.
All right, wait a minute. I did not start that fight. You did too.
You calling me a liar? I ain't calling you for dinner.
This episode is just a classic. It's a good backstory episode, and it explores the boys' relationship at a slightly deeper level. Even though it's silly, it's hard not to see our own held grudges in this episode, and that even though time has passed, those grudges are still there and they can just explode without any warning. And I think that adds a lot of humor to this episode.
So, how was school?
You're the worst. You sicken me.
I see.
I also like the conflicting stories, as you can totally tell both of them are just talking out their asses from how their kid characters are portrayed. And overacting is the easiest thing for a kid to do. I mean, hell, they'll do that on their free time. But these kid actors really do feel like a younger version of Drake and Josh. I even think this kid does a good job imitating Josh's trademark. And Drake and Josh's fight easily could have gotten old fast. But there's more emphasis on how they handle the fight as opposed to the fight itself. Like Drake's attempt to find another room in the house to live in. Each one gets a different reaction in a different form of comedy, and it makes it much easier to enjoy. And even when they do cut to their bickering, they never linger on it, and a lot of the stuff Drake and Josh say are pretty funny. And the reveal of what happens and how different they act compared to their stories, I think is a great little commentary on why it's best to let your rage go, because holding on to it for too long can completely cloud your judgment. Overall, it's a creative episode, and its topic feels very real. But like some of the best of this show's episodes, they take that and find a way to make us laugh at it.
I hope you go bald. I hope they cancel Oprah. Take that back.
It's gonna take some time to realize.
So Megan, in the first 2 seasons, I feel was much more of a character to keep the show from getting unnecessarily complicated. In fact, I'd make the argument that the name was more popular thanks to this alone.
Hey, Megan!
But for the most part, she was used pretty decently. But when the 3rd and 4th seasons came around, they decided to give her a little more screen time as well as her own set of teenage problems. And that resulted in one of the most heartfelt episodes of the show, Megan's First Kiss. Now the title pretty much says it all. It's about Megan getting her first boyfriend and Drake and Josh being unsure how to feel about it. And coming from someone who is a big brother, I totally relate with Drake and Josh throughout this whole episode. And when they dress up in those ridiculous-ass disguises, yeah, it's not only funny as hell, but sums up the protective lengths a big brother would consider going to when their little sister starts dating. And even though the story isn't anything new, there's a level of sincerity to it that it's hard not to enjoy it. Like when Drake and Josh ruin Megan's relationship, they very begrudgingly bend down to her ex's will and give him the most random requests he has.
Both of you, pants. They're not even gonna fit you. I'll grow into them.
Like, it's not only really funny, but there's something so sincere about how they'll let this guy treat them to make Megan happy. And yeah, while they fall into the cliche of he has another girlfriend, it's executed really well. It doesn't appear until the last half of the episode. Drake and Josh have a very funny reaction to it.
You are not gonna believe this, whoa, man! You are not gonna believe this!
Mrs. Hayford died? No!
and they immediately set it up to where Megan meets the other girlfriend. It's paced really well, it's structured a bit differently, and it feels very respectful and real. Like, it's not talking down to its audience, making them feel bad if this happens to them. In fact, they acknowledge that there's a good chance this is gonna happen to you, especially in high school. But there will always be someone there to help you back on your feet, and it's pretty comforting, honestly. And because they portray it that way, it doesn't feel the least bit corny when Megan reveals how much she cares about her brothers. This is an episode I think all of us were expecting someday, but seeing it play out this way, it was very satisfying, and it handles this predicament in a much more straightforward manner. There's a lot of fun, there's a lot of laughs, and there's a whole bunch of hearts.
Pip, pip, the doodly-doo. Pip, pip, the doodly-doo. I'm gonna start saying that.
It's gonna take some time to realize.
Josh is done. Yeah, this is by far the show's most mature episode, and it's one that sums up Drake and Josh's relationship the best. It's about Josh finally having enough of Drake ruining his life and deciding he wants nothing more to do with him. And this results in Josh having a much happier life, while Drake is constantly hit with misfortune.
I'm off to the gym to play me a little racquetball with Helen.
Your boss?
Yeah, we've been getting along a lot better lately. See you, Max.
Now, Josh being the one to decide this is pretty strong in of itself, seeing as throughout the majority of the series, Josh has stated multiple times how much he loves having a brother. And this gravity is not lost on the episode at all. And for the record, this wouldn't be a complete, amazing Drake and Josh episode without some memorable moments. And a lot of the show's most memorable moments are complemented well by the show's humor. The ping pong scene is a perfect fusion of visual comedy and hilarious impressions, as well as used in a pretty emotional way at the end. Some of the punchlines that are reused are brought back in clever ways that serve different purposes, and the episode's execution is perfect. All throughout the show, Drake never seems to realize the damage he's doing. Usually when Josh goes through hell, Drake just brushes it off, feeling like he'll get over it, even stating that at one point. So when he's forced to deal with it and can barely handle a week of it, he finally owns up to his wrongdoings and he gives a very humane apology.
I'm sorry, I'm probably the worst brother in the world, and, you're way better off without me, I just need you to understand that, sorry, Josh, I'm sorry.
And him breaking down like this is something we, as an audience, never actually expected to see. And I know at the end of this episode, nothing actually changes. But that's not the point. It's not about Drake changing and not messing things up anymore. Hell, there wouldn't even be a show if that was the case. The whole point of this episode is empathy. And this kind of empathy, no matter how crazy it is still portrayed in a way where pretty much anyone can see themselves in both characters. And it makes you feel conflicted in a way that most of this audience will feel in their lives. And you know what? Watching this, I think I know why I like damn near every episode of this show. It never feels like this show lost its identity. Even up to season 4, the formula was virtually the same with Josh. So I'm impressed they waited till one of their last episodes to switch it up, because I never realized they never switched it up. Which might be because they always did something new with it, and every resolution always felt fresh. And that's a sign of a show that just knows its strengths. Overall, this is one of the show's finest episodes. And it's no surprise to me that so many people consider it their all-time favorite.
Are you prepared to ping the pong? I am prepared, young Szechuan. Your pong is no match for my ping.
It's gonna take some time to realize.
Who's got game? Jesus Christ, season 4 was something else, wasn't it? This is the third straight season 4 episode to appear in the top 5, and what's even more impressive about this one is that it's also a role reversal episode. But this is a different kind of role reversal because it involves Josh challenging Drake to a contest to see who can get the most dates. Yeah, that alone sounds ridiculous, but they make it work because Drake ends up meeting a girl he clicks with perfectly, while Josh is given advice on how to get girls that ends up being the holy grail of girl advice.
You just tell me I have cool shoes, then walk away?
Yeah?
I mean, I thought you were hitting on me.
I don't know how good this advice is because I'm a socially awkward person, but it sure as hell sounds believable.
You're really nice, but you don't try to ask them out. They don't feel pressured, then they chase after you.
And the montage of Josh's dates, oh my god, it's so hard not to laugh. I mean, you gotta give it to the guy, at least he's not picky. Scratch that, he might have a problem. Actually, I do like this joke because I think it's a funny little callback to how Josh was when the show started.
I'm not cool, okay? Why do you think old people love me so much?
And I like that they throw that callback in an episode that's acknowledging how much Josh has changed since then. I mean, yeah, obviously he's lost a lot of weight, but he also grows to be more socially confident and even has a pretty nice relationship at one point. So it makes the role reversal much more natural. Whereas on the flip side, Drake and this girl named Carly, piss off! They work well together. I mean, yeah, she's into the exact same stuff as him, but it doesn't solely rely on that. The way they interact feels very genuine, and it makes the relationship much more believable.
Sparks, nice. Yeah, I saw him live last week at the Python.
No way, I was there.
Oh yeah, you were the guy in the crowd listening.
Yeah, that was me.
And even though they do dip into cliche writing territory at times, specifically to create problems, at the very least, they find unique and fitting ways for those problems to be resolved. So yeah, overall, I would say this and Josh Is Done really sum up the high note that this show went off on. I mean, this is an excellent example of when a show knows how much it has and when it's time to walk away. And I think that's a big reason I hold this show in such high regard.
You're my brother, and I love you. And I use your toothbrush almost every morning.
So before I reveal number 1, here are the episodes I'd rank 11 through 20. Really, any of these could have been top 10 worthy, because so many of them seem to encompass a lot that worked well with the show. But for me, my favorite episode is my favorite for reasons that might be, well, a little more personal.
It's gonna take some time to realize.
Blues Brothers. Oh yeah, of all the Drake and Josh episodes I've come across, this was the one I felt the most inspired by. It's about Josh joining his dad to do the morning weather, but because of Megan psyching him out, Josh ends up embarrassing himself and becomes the laughingstock of the city.
That's not how he did it. He did it like this.
Oh, it was more like...
Not like this.
For the record, that guy right there, that's Gavin. But yeah, it's impossible to watch this episode and not feel the pain Josh is feeling. But the episode manages to stay entertaining because everything Josh does is stuff I assume most people feel like doing when they're embarrassed. So even though you relate to his pain, it's still easy to laugh at it because you can totally see yourself in it.
Well, that's it. I am never going up in front of people again. I'm gonna go live in a cave. Just me and trail mix.
And at times, even Drake sees the pain Josh is going through and offers to help him out. But it's done in ways that doesn't feel corny or out of character, because Drake does find what happened to him funny. Also, Drake is given a pretty despicable, yet still entertaining nemesis this episode, as both of them are trying to win a talent show. So in a clever piece of writing, this episode combines the problems the two are facing into something they can tackle together. And they also use this as an opportunity to work in another version of the show's theme song.
But if you look inside, I'll show you
No way! Dude, they stole our song!
And the way everything plays out, I think it's flawless. Drake's speech to Josh is well written, Josh's entrance into the song is triumphant, the song overall is excellent, it's a very nice rendition of Soul Man, and it completely ties up every single plot point in this episode. And you know what? That's how you deal with embarrassment. You let it go, you continue to enjoy your life, and you give people a different thing to associate with you. And anytime I ever got embarrassed in school, just thinking about this always made it easier for me to look forward and realize that whatever I was embarrassed by is going to pass and soon it won't have an effect on my life. And while embarrassment is an easy topic to discuss since everyone experiences it, this episode still handles the topic as delicately as possible, while still managing to make the over-the-top jokes that made the show so lovable, which could have easily ended up in the message being muddled and the topic just feeling like an easy target for humor. So that care and maturity that was put in the show really shines here, and everything about this ending is fun, entertaining, loaded with rewatchability, and inspiring. In fact, this ending right here, this ending is Drake and Josh.
I'm a soul man.